Coming up on this episode.
On the left and on the right side of our factory, the buildings were on fire. My dad's factory in front were the employees protecting the factory.
Oh my goodness.
Unbelievable. Lesson number one is always treat your employees well because you never know how they're going to pay you back. And that was my message throughout my career of how I would handle my employees.
Welcome to the Leading Peers podcast. I'm your host, Leo Popek, the founder and CEO of Leading Peers, the community for CEOs to connect, collaborate, and grow. On this show, you will listen to some of the most amazing CEOs share their personal stories and the lessons they've learned along the way about leadership and life. Let's dive in. Hey, Franck, welcome to the Leading Peers podcast. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Hi, Leo. I love your energy, and I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. So Franck, I don't know if you've heard any of our prior episodes, but I can tell you that the format's simple. We start by getting to know you a little bit. So why don't you tell us in 2 or 3 minutes that 30,000 foot view of your background, which is so unique, so fascinating. For those that don't know you, you're so eclectic. And I just like to start there. First 20 to 25 years, what was your life about?
First 20, 25, yeah. So born in France, my parents lived in the Congo. At the time, it was called Zaire. Then we moved to South Africa. Then we went back to the Congo. So I switched schools quite a bit from a French system to an English system, back to a French system. And ultimately, I graduated from high school in the Congo, or actually Zaire at the time, at the American School of Kinshasa, TASOC.
Wow.
I came from an entrepreneurial family. My family had retail stores in South Africa, hardware stores. And then we, in the Congo, my dad decided that he wanted to become a chemist and opened a few paint factories. And then I moved to the U.S. for university. After I got my MBA, I got a phone call from mom and dad, come work in the family business. So off I went at the time, newly married with my wife from Long Island, New York. So that was a big, huge culture shock for her. And we worked, so I worked in the family business. My wife worked for USAID in the Congo. And then there was an uprising, so we came back to the U.S. The plans of working in the family business sort of evaporated, and I started working here in the U.S. for international companies, primarily in business development. That's a little bit the first 25 years.
Wow. I don't imagine back in the 70s in the Congo, there were a lot of white Jewish kids growing up. Did you feel quite unique, quite different?
So actually, the history of the Jews of the Congo is an interesting one because a lot of them came from the island of Rhodes in the Mediterranean. It used to be now it's a Greek island. It used to be an Italian island, but it was an old Jewish community from the Middle Ages. And then in between the wars, a lot of them left for economic reasons. Some went to the west coast of the U.S. and another branch went down to Africa. So between Zimbabwe, at the time was Rhodesia, South Africa, and the Congo, we had a few thousands of us. Mostly in the southern part, in the mining areas of Zaire, of the Congo at the time. So did it feel different? Of course, we had, but we were a tight community, maybe 300 families.
Wow.
Small.
Did you suffer any discrimination growing up because of your religion or your race?
Well, we went to, when I was at the Belgian school, there was a few episodes where, pointed out for being Jewish, some normal anti-Semitic stuff that happens.
Sounds like nothing too different than what might happen anywhere in the world, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think anti-Semitism is pretty common, especially nowadays. But it always was. There was this, especially as European Jews, you have you're first Jewish and then European, and that's a big difference from being American Jews. I think that here you identify more as an American, more of a integrated society, although it's a younger society, right?
Right.
But yeah, there's some hidden back of your thoughts, understanding that hey, you are somewhat different.
All right, let's move on. I'd love to get a sense of the critical pivots in your life. So you're 25 or so, mid 20s, just married, go back to the Congo, and then there's the uprising, right? When you go back, there's the uprising and you decide to come back to the US with the wife. That's sort of how it went.
Yeah, and there's a running joke. I'm sure that my wife was not very happy to go to Congo, so she must have somehow bribed.
To
But
create the uprising.
there
All
was
right.
certainly a pivotal moment for sure.
So tell us about what happened later, because I get the sense the next 20 years of your life are going to be super corporate-y from what I know of you in the jewelry business. But big picture, broad strokes, what are some of the companies you work for and some of the roles that you had during that period from a 30,000-foot view?
Yeah, so very quickly, almost sounds like I'm repeating my resume, but started with Cartier, employee number three in a new subsidiary in Miami. At the time, was called the Master Cartier, and really went into sales, business development, client servicing in the Caribbean. Then Latin America, did more of the franchise part of that business, opening Cartier stores. Um, After that, I joined Tiffany Company, developed Latin America, opened 11 countries in Latin America for Tiffany. After that, the entrepreneurial bug got a hold of me again. So I did a few ventures, ended up in Morocco for a startup that we were funding actually. That didn't work out. Came back and went back into the corporate world with a subsidiary of Tiffany called Little Switzerland. It's a destination retailer in the Caribbean and Alaska at the time, anyway. And basically went into general management at the time, and then ultimately with Pandora. So I hit the three big jewelry brands. And in Pandora, after developing Latin America, I focused on really developing the local market in Mexico.
So why did you pick the jewelry business and were you always in growth and in sales? What was it about that really identified with?
So, I knew that I wanted to go into business. I was not excellent at math. I wasn't going to be a scientist. I wasn't going to be a medical doctor. Those professions I knew earlier on that wasn't my calling. I came from an entrepreneurial family. Business was all talked about, imports, developing markets, production, in the paint factories, certainly. So that was a little bit my base of reference. So I knew I was going to go into business somewhere, somehow. And we had a good friend, as it turned out, was a family friend from South Africa who was one of the founders of the Cartier subsidiary in Miami. So reached out to him, and I got the job working with him. And that's how I ended up in jewelry, and that's a little bit of my wheelhouse.
So the critical pivot appears to be what happens after that long corporate career in jewelry when you go into entrepreneurship. So tell us about how that happened. What was it that made you say, so much for my corporate life, time to become an entrepreneur? What played into that? Where did it find you in your life? And how did you decide to go for it? I know you had tried it with that Moroccan startup, but it didn't go anywhere. You aborted mission right away. But this last pivot into entrepreneurship has really held, and you've been an entrepreneur for quite a number of years now. So tell us about that pivot.
So I was working with entrepreneurial families. Even with Pandora, I was and Cartier. The people we were selling to were family businesses. They had jewelry stores. They wanted to go into the franchise part of the business. So I was always dealing with family dynamics. I told you about the Moroccan venture. There was a few others. We started a non-emergency medical transport company in Broward County. Ultimately, we sold that. So there was always that entrepreneurial bug or way to do things, that vision of how to see things, coupled with working with entrepreneurial families that sort of said, okay, I understand corporate ladder, and I grew that ladder on that ladder, but ultimately it was a desire to really control more of my destiny, right? I was after Pandora, I went for a small stint. And by the way, Pandora was very much of an entrepreneurial um, character, right? Behaviors. It was starting from nothing, built the infrastructure, built the corporate offices, opened 60 stores. So that was, but I had a great banker behind me, right? That was Pandora
Yeah.
headquarters. So as long as I had good investment proposals, the money kept flowing, and as long as the stores were profitable, that was the key. So that was still, very much of an entrepreneurial bent in everything that I did. Developing new markets, it was really more of an entrepreneurial activity.
And when you were opening those 60 stores, those 60 branches for Pandora, did it feel like you were selling corporate on why they should invest? Or was it that they were deciding it and you were executing their marching orders?
No, so it was very much, hey, this is we want to develop Mexico. I had built a little bit of a franchise network there, and the idea was, okay, we should take the second largest market in Latin America. We should have a little part of that pie. So developed a plan for it, and really presented that plan. And once it was accepted, that's how we got started. So it was, again, the entrepreneurial part of me was on, I remember December 16th, I believe it was, 2016, or maybe 19th, 2016, landing in Mexico City. And now I had a mission. I had to find, who was going to help me find their locations, find the HR person that was going to help me create that structure, find the sales manager that was going to be able to really run the store. So it was first few months were first month was in a Starbucks cafe, and then until we got some very much entrepreneurial.
Wow. Wow. And I know you spent about 4 years in Colombia. Did you make that a home, or did you commute back and forth between the U.S. and Colombia? How did that play out for you, for the work and for the family?
Yeah, so Colombia was a smaller stint. It was actually, I realized, so I got hired out of Mexico to lead Colombia for a private footwear company called
Oh.
Bata, the Bata shoes.
Mm.
And when I got there, the idea was that, hey, this was a bigger organization. It was a factory of 500 people. We had 300 retail stores. It was big. Um,
And you were running all of that?
yeah, so I was running that, and the idea was that they had not had a country manager, general manager for about 7, 8 months. So when I got there, there was a lot of dysfunctions, especially some land grabbing, controlling, especially from the finance person. So when I got in, the idea was that Cheryl, my wife, was going to join me, and unfortunately, her parents fell ill, and so she was back and forth a lot more time in the U.S. than with me. So after some long, deep thinking, I was like, why am I doing this? I always wanted to run a division, and here I was, but doing it alone. So that wasn't very rewarding. Certainly on the professional side, there was a lot of rewards, a lot of things that I discovered and learned and turned around in a very short amount of time. But it wasn't fulfilling in terms of where am I going. The next step was to become president of Latin America in Chile. That was even
Yeah.
further away from where I was,
Yeah.
so that was not part of the plan.
Was that your last job in corporate?
Actually, no. So I came back to a family business in the shoe business, distributors, importers and distributors of shoes, to big box retailers here in Pompano Beach. And I came in as COO, and I quickly realized that there was a cultural misfit.
Yeah.
Then
Okay. So that was the last job.
that was it. That's when I said, you know what? I know how to do this. I've done this. Maybe I should really go back to what I, number one, know what to do, and two, go back to being an entrepreneur, helping entrepreneurial families. So that's what happened 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So fascinating. Take us back to 2021, the year that you decided to go into what you do now. And tell us about what you do now for the listener. I mean, I'm very familiar with what you do. You're my dear friend. I've had the opportunity to have so many amazing conversations with you. But for the listener that doesn't know what you do, tell us what you decided to pursue in 2021 and how that has evolved since 2021. But we'll get to that later. Tell us about the decision of how you picked what you were going to do to help entrepreneurs.
So I read a book. I found a book on the CEO's desk called Traction. And I had heard of Traction. I read the book, and I'm like, this is what I've been doing all along. In big corporate America, you know, it's just best practices. And the book was specifically oriented targeting smaller businesses. I'm like, I can speak from experience of how I've done this and the end result. So I said, this is something that I can probably do with credibility. And so that's when I made the switch.
So you decided to pursue a career as an EOS implementer in 2021?
Yeah, so that's what go ahead.
And did you launch your company? Did you join forces with other people? What happened?
Yeah, so I had the good fortune of meeting a great person, Cesar Quintero, who was starting up. He was an EOS implementer, and he wanted to create a firm model. And he was looking for people that would join his firm. I joined his firm, and that's how I got my start in really learning how the sessions work and the facilitation. One of the biggest switches I needed to do is that I came from a position where, especially in, we talk about different business cultures, and there's certainly one that is predominant in Latin America is that, as a leader, you have to be very confident, and it's less hearing a lot of different opinions of advice and more about telling. And that was one of the biggest things I needed to work on as a facilitator, EOS facilitator, is that I need to humble myself enough to understand that I don't know it all. And although I may know my experience, but my experience may not be applicable to the people that really need the help. So that was one of the biggest fundamental changes I need to do.
Terrific. And I remember that's how we met back in 2021 with Cesar Quintero and you on a Zoom call, if I'm not mistaken, at the height of the pandemic. And then after that, Cesar said, hey, I'm already involved with a CEO organization. Frank, why don't you get involved with Leo's startup at the time, Leading Peers? And you and I decided to get together for coffee. And in that conversation right away in Weston, I remember at Graziano, we hit it off. And before I knew it, you were saying, whatever I can do to help you, let me know. And I said, I'm putting together an advisory board. Your background seems amazing. Would you be interested? And you said yes. And a few months later, you became one of the founding members of my advisory board that's guided me so well over the past 4 years. So that's how it started, right?
It did. That's exactly how it started. And it's been a great association. I've learned so much. Not only from you, but really the way you're building your business, right? So that's a different podcast. Maybe we'll reverse roles at that point.
All right. I can't wait to segue into what's next. So tell us about leadership lessons you've learned over the course of your life. I can't begin to imagine the number of lessons you've learned on leadership throughout your journey, because you've been in so many different companies in leadership roles. And then as an entrepreneur now over the last 4 years, there's so much that you've learned. And I also want to hear how that has changed since you have stopped being a part of Cesar's company, The Profit Recipe, to start your own, which I believe happened a couple years ago. How has that shift also played out in terms of your leadership style in your new company, Focus Forward? And tell us about how you decided to build, the culture around who you are, because one of the things you do, which I think is fascinating, is you actually tell the people who are going to work in your company, this is who I am, this is my style, and you let them know, I think it's like on day one, how to work with you. So tell us a little bit about your style and how that style has been shaped by these experiences.
Yeah, so let me answer the first question is what about my leadership or my leadership models? And the first one, the first memory I have is really of my dad. My dad, I remember we had just moved from South Africa. My mother being French, my father being Belgian. There was definitely a cultural misfit living in South Africa for them. It was difficult, especially for my mother. So we left. And by the way, my dad was very, very successful. I remember when we moved to South Africa, he took me to buy a business, a small hardware store. I still remember we walked into this house. It seemed to me like it was dark. We walked into a room, and there was the owner sitting in a bed, right? He was ill. There was a lawyer next to him and his wife to the left, and they signed the papers. And that's how my dad. So my first thought of a leader is, here's my dad who bought a hardware store. Fast forward 7 years, he had built a large hardware store on 2 stories in a building that the top floor had 10 or 15 offices. So he had done very well, yet he left it. He left it because of, as I told you, the cultural misfits. The challenge is we moved back to the Congo. At the time, that was the first time I saw my dad as an employee. And after 3 months, I remember seeing him on the edge of his bed, dejected, depressed, and my mother with her arm around him. And that was his moment that he said, I'm going back, I'm taking another risk. And he opened his own hardware store back in the Congo. And again, fast forward from that, he opened 2 factories. So when I came back from university, MBA, my first work, I landed in the Congo, Zaire at the time. There was hyperinflation, triple digits, and my father paid his employees on a weekly basis. But you can imagine with the devaluation, it meant nothing. Along with the paycheck was commodities. There was rice, there was pilchard, there were tuna, and that was what he gave along with them to them for sustenance. Fast forward months later, when there was a uprising, my mother was unfortunately ill on her deathbed in Nice, France, and my wife Cheryl had stayed working for the U.S. Embassy, and she got evacuated. And the bus out drove in front of the factories, my dad's factory. On the left and on the right side of our factory, the buildings were on fire. And my dad's factory in front were the employees protecting the factory.
Oh my goodness.
Lesson number one.
I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Unbelievable. Lesson number one is always treat your employees well, because you never know how they're going to pay you back. And that was my message throughout my career of how I would handle my employees. So fast forward, so lesson number one in leadership, I had to close 3 stores in the island of St. Martin, and I made sure that every one of my employees at the time was Little Switzerland had a job by the time we ended it. I got an award from them. The only awards I keep in my session room are 2 awards, both of them from employees, not from the companies. Wow. The employees gave me an award for the way I treated them on the exit. So leadership model, very employee focused, very relationship focused, listening, and that came later on in life. By the way, I got in Mexico, I got a big lesson in humility, and that really also affected my leadership style. So how am I as a leader today? When I hire somebody, I actually have a leadership model that I got from a workshop with Doug Conant. And it is basically what are my core values, what's important for me, and let's say, slide presentation that I shared with the group here, with our group, our leadership team, and it's what I sit down with my direct reports when I hire them, and I say, this is who I am, this is my family, and I'll tell you my pet peeves, what I don't like, what I am not willing to accept, and so it gets them on the learning curve really fast.
Could you share a little bit more with us about what that sheet says? What does it say that I need to know about working with you or for your company? And what are your pet peeves? Tell us a little bit more about your style.
I would say high standards, but with a heart. I see a relationship, we learn our jobs, we don't know it from the get-go, but I want high standards, and yet there's a human factor that's important. Another one is that I hate drama. I'm very much to the point. So if we have a situation, I don't want the long story. I just want to have the summary of what's going on and what you suggest we do to solve it. That's a little bit, I'm very to the point, unfortunately. Sometimes I don't have a lot of time to listen. And this is something that one of the things that I needed to change in facilitation, right? You have to know more about, okay, let's listen to this, but are we going in the right direction? Because if it becomes a long story, you have to also cut. So that's a little bit, accountability is a big thing for me. I want to make sure that, if we commit, then we deliver. So there you have
Amazing.
it.
So one of the things that most surprised me is that a few months after having you in my advisory board, where you're advising me along with 5 other people, you tell me, Leo, I want to become a member of Leading Peers. This had not ever happened. I had a couple people in my advisory board that were members first, then I selected them to be in my advisory board. But you're the first person who said from my advisory board, I want to become a member. And it hasn't happened again since. None of the other three people on my advisory board that aren't members have become members. And so what is it that made you say, I need to be in Leading Peers?
So a strong, CEOs, it's typically the tip of the pyramid or very close to the top. And especially in the corporate world, the higher you get, the more of a mask you have to wear, right? So it's not like you can go to your colleagues or to your boss and say, hey, I'm having a hard time, or I don't know, especially not in corporate America. That's seen as weakness. You're supposed to, and in our Latin culture, that's even more so. You have to be all know, or at least not show weakness. So during that time, I had a coach. When I was in Latin America, I had a coach all along. When I had my startup with non-emergency medical transport, Blake was my coach, and he kept me accountable. He was my sounding board. He was a guy that said, Frank, I don't think that's right, or Frank, have you considered this, or Frank, you're full of hot air. It's not going to work. But that sounding board was really important. So when I decided that I was going to go on my own and build my firm, my EOS firm, I needed to have that level of accountability. I needed to have that, hey, am I doing things right or wrong? And that's why I asked, I became a member of Leading Peers.
So you joined LP board number 5 2 to 3 years ago. I believe it was, 2.5 years ago or so. And you've been a member of the same board ever since. And recently, we had an expert workshop on accountability, and you were asked, who is your accountability group? And you said, it's my Leading Peers board. So this group of people of Peer Board 5 is your accountability group, the people you consider that are there to hold you accountable for getting things done. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What really worked about the way that board came together, the way that we collaborate. And of course, I've been the board leader of that board from its inception, right before you joined. I was already there as board leader when you joined. What is it about our board that made you feel like I can trust these people to occupy that highly critical role of being my accountability and guidance group for building this business of mine?
Yeah, you know, and I say this, we just had our meeting today, so, and I mentioned there is that we can talk about the 80% of stuff that you would talk with another CEO. You know, you talk about your numbers, maybe you'll be a little bit vulnerable and say, you know, I'm struggling with this issue. But to really get to the 10 and 10 on the extremes, you have to have absolute trust. You have to be willing.
What do you mean by the extremes? What do you mean by the extremes?
Today I sort of shared about, you know, a personal story about somebody very close that I work with that unfortunately committed suicide. That's not something that is easy to talk about, and that's one example of the extreme. Another extreme is, you know, we are in financial difficulty. Circumstances in the business are such that you have a very short runway financially, and you need to have a group of people that say, wake up, right? Even though I may not see it, the path you're going on is not the right one. You need to react, right? So those are the things that you wouldn't say that to any other CEO, right? It's just too personal. It's too vulnerable. So the ability to, that's what a board leader, that's what a board does. And as long as you have the right members that you're able to get naked with in a figurative way,
Yeah.
right? Those are the people that you can trust to give you advice, or to at least be a sounding board to say, hey, just test my theory here. Is this right or not?
Frank, you know Leading Peers so much better than most of our members because you've been in it for 2.5 years, but you've been helping me build it as a member of my advisory board for almost 4 years now. So you have thought long and hard about how to leverage the membership to its fullest. Can you share with the listeners, many of our listeners are members of Leading Peers, what it is that you do that really adds value to you that you think a lot of people are not taking advantage of? Some of those, call it secrets, that you're happy to pass on to others on how to get the most value out of the membership. It could be in the peer board or it could be in other spaces. Tell us those 2 or 3 pearls that you've identified that are of massive value and a lot of people are not taking advantage of.
Yeah. I think that we have to really invest a lot of time, not time physically, but mental time and emotional time in the peer board. I think that that's where the magic happens, right? That's where you are willing to say and not only speak from a position of accountability, but also from having empathy. By the way, the members, and this only happens if you have the right people in the room. But so that's my number one, is really dig deep into that and hold yourself accountable. Come in prepared, come in willing to disclose, to talk about things. I've had some terrible months. Okay, why? And really go into it, because we show our numbers, right? We show our top line, our bottom line, and we see the trends. And a lot of these scorecards we sort of developed together. But the idea is that, you know, we have accountability, and if you're willing to ask or be open to be asked the right questions or the hard questions, I think that that's number one. You'll get so much more from our time invested there. The second I would say is you have some excellent workshops. The workshops are the quality of the people that give the workshops and speak from experience. You come out with nuggets, gold nuggets of what, hey, I could implement this if I, and looking at it from a learning perspective. I think that's the second thing that is really good to extract. And the third thing is really the networking, the breakfast that you have. So those happen 3 or 4 times a year. I think it's 3 times a year. And that's where you have the opportunity of meeting other people and really sitting around a table of, again, but new people, new members, and asking questions. And the way you set it up is fantastic because we ask questions and we go around the table and really get to know more people from an intimate in an intimate setting rather than just a general networking. Let's have a beer and have wine, and it's more superficial kind of conversations. The questions are made so that you ask the questions that are deep, and that's good. So those three things are the things that I think are important to leverage and dig deeper in order to get the full value of leading peers.
Great advice, and I completely agree with you. So I know that what you do for a living is to help other CEOs, other entrepreneurs, working with them and their teams. And before we get into the vision of your company and a little bit more into that, I wanted to get a sense of when you're on the receiving end of that and you're receiving guidance or you're receiving accountability, an accountability check-in from a member of your peer board. Is there one instance that comes to mind as an example of so many that we've had? Because even in the meeting today, I clearly remember you having a massive takeaway from today's meeting, but you've probably been through 30 of these at this point. So is there one that you can signal out as an example of a decision or a moment where you had to face a reality that you weren't seeing, or something somebody said to you that had a drastic impact in the way you've gone about to create your business and your life since then?
You know, about 2 months ago, I've been leading peers for 2.5, 3 years, as you mentioned, and we had this one particular board member that asked me to devise a business plan that would 10x my revenue. And I got to tell you, I'm at the point where I was like, I'm not sure I want to put that much effort. I know what effort takes to build a business, and I'm not sure I want to do that again. It's going to take a lot of effort. And I sort of took the challenge. It's sort of who we are as CEOs, I think, as in a generality. But so I built a business plan. Now I have to execute on it. So and that business plan really made me think long and hard about what do I want to do. What not only what do I want to do, but what legacy do I want to leave? Right. I'm second or third chapter in my life. And I want to think about, okay, what is it that I want to do? I've always believed that I will never stop working, because I believe that the day you stop working is the day your mind goes to mush. I believe that family is the ultimate wealth. There is no better wealth in the world. That doesn't come in a bank account, and it's not on a note. It's the legacy that you leave. So what do I want to do? How do I 10x my business, thinking about those core values that I just shared? So I'm looking to build a family advisory firm that's going to help family businesses unlock the value that they have, create clarity in their mission, and create a legacy if they want to transition and hopefully get themselves out of a role. So that's a little bit what I created, and I share with the board not too long ago.
And I'm so excited for you. And it was clearly a before and after. For about 2 to 2.5 years with the board, you were like, okay, I've arrived. You know, I made the decision to start my own firm. I got this beautiful office. You have an amazing space in Deerfield Beach where we meet. And then you filled up your calendar. You know, you had the number of clients that you wanted to help. And it felt like for a while you were just like, okay, that's it. This is going to be what I do. And then you started toying with different ideas of I might, do something on the side here or something on the side there. And then this gentleman in the group, who's, by the way, approaching 70 years of age, is the one that challenges you with 10Xing. It's not some 20-year-old, right out of, the Endeavor program. This is a guy who you would think is closer to retiring. He's like, how are you going to 10X this thing over the next 5 years? And you could have said, who cares? And you, for some reason, that resonated with you. And I think in part is because of that relationship that you had built with him, that you knew that he cared about you. He saw that you were capable of 10Xing, and he believed in you. And all of a sudden you took on that challenge because I even said to you a couple months into it, hey, let's go to lunch. I want to make sure that your heart is into this because it's going to take a lot of energy. And we went out to lunch recently and you said to me, this is what I'm going to do. And it was so authentic and you seemed so energized that I was fully on board and I'm so excited for you. So tell us a little bit about this pivot now that you're making. So you've been an EOS implementer for the last 4 years. A couple of years ago, you branched off of the profit recipe to start your company, Focus Forward, and you've been the only EOS implementer of the firm since its inception in 2023. Now you're at this point where the business is going to 10x, and what's that going to look like? What's going to happen? Is it just EOS? Of course, I know the answers, but tell our listeners where Focus Forward is going and what you're focusing forward on.
Yeah. So let me start with the second part of that question, because I think that'll frame it better. Is that basically the solution I want to provide, or at least the advice I want to provide, is I want family businesses to be able to leverage what they built, and whether it's and by the way, there's a huge market. We'll talk about that maybe later, but ultimately, it's how do family businesses leverage what they built, and if not monetize it, at least get what they want from it. Right? So that's what I'm trying to solve. And through the firm that I'm building, well, I'm going to offer two. So it's really the growth company. I'm not looking at startups. I'm looking at companies that are either Gen 1 or more, probably in the late 50s, that are looking at something to exit. Right? So that's my target market. I have it very clearly in mind. And I'm going to offer the services of, okay, how do you get yourself out of the accountability chart, the org chart, and how do you get the people so that you have something to transition to? Everybody's going to transition. We know that. We get to choose if it's boots first, or is it going to be something that is going to be more substantial, more significant, leaving a legacy. And that's what I want to try and solve. So the firm that I'm building is one in which we're going to offer EOS to build the company and exit planning to help the transition. I'm going to work with the specialists that know how to do M&A, that know how to do all of the different specialties. I'll be doing the quarterbacking on the exit planning, and I'll be fully involved in the growth of the business, because that's what I know how to do. I know how to build businesses. I know how to structure them so that we can get ourselves out of the accountability chart.
So Frank, tell us a little more about what you mean by family businesses, because I understand why you chose family businesses, because of course you grew up in a family business, you worked for so many years in family-owned businesses, and I get all that. And I also know you enough to know that family is the core value of your life, and your family means more to you than all the money in the world combined. With that said, though, currently you're not employing anyone in your family. You're not leading your company with your wife Cheryl. So, what do you mean by family business? What does it mean? Does it mean that you can sell your business and help your family through the legacy of that sale, or does it mean that you have to lead it with your children or with your spouse? What do you mean by family business, and who are you willing to help? Is it somebody who just wants to leave a great legacy for their family, or does it have to be somebody who's making decisions, business decisions, with business partners that are direct family members of theirs?
That's a great question, and the truth is that I'm not. I'll just go back a little bit to my experience. Right, my experience is I remember. Later on in life, I wish I had a dad I could ask questions to. My dad, unfortunately, passed away young, my mother even younger. And I wish I had that sounding board that, to ask questions. And when I first went back to the Congo and worked in the family business, I was enthusiastic. I thought I knew a lot. I had worked 1 year at Cartier, and I was like, okay, this is how we should do this. But I didn't know, right? And my father, in his grace, was patient. But it was built on quicksand. It was an empire, or it was a business that was built on quicksand. It didn't have a lot of longevity because of the volatility of the environment. So I would love to have a family member work with me, but I don't know. And all I need to do right now is focus on creating something that hopefully will be attractive enough that will be beyond me, that they can say, hey, I can see myself having a role here.
Mm-hmm. And whether that leads to passing the torch to the next generation in your family or to the sale of your business, either of those options is going to be on the table for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I think I have a little bit of a runway. As I said, I'm not going to retire. So what I'd like to do is, and my plan is to really build something that doesn't require my time as inventory, but that I can then leverage and work with people to create something. I hope that one of my children say, you know what, hey, I can see myself fitting in here. I have, you know, some what I believe some pretty smart kids, and but they may or may not have been bitten by the entrepreneurial bug yet. They may have some scars from my entrepreneurial journey. You know, we all carry those, all right? So at the end of the day, I don't know how that's going to turn out. I have a wish. Who knows what's going to happen there? But I'd love to be able to, at some point, say, a family advisory firm for family businesses run by family.
Franck, you're building a company that's going to help people both growing their company and exiting the org chart. And that is what EOS is there for. And then on the exit planning side, it's also about helping them exit the org chart, but also about being able to sell the business or pass it on to the next generation. Are you going to be working with implementers on the team, or are you going to be doing all of the work, the one-on-one work with each client?
No, so I'd like to be able to. Have. So to answer your question, no, I need to have help to do the implementation. I'd like to find entrepreneurs that are, or implementers, sorry, that love implementing. Implementers that are great at implementing, they're experts. They get teams unstuck and pointed in the right direction. There are plenty of those. Those are the ones that I'd love to have part of my team on the implementation of EOS, really growing, implementing the tools. And on the exit side, it's more of a person that is a CEPA, a certified exit planner, who can bring the different pieces, the different specialties together behind a plan and hold them accountable so that we can bring options to our owners. So to answer your questions, yes, the idea is that I have advisors that can help me do that.
Your offering is so unique, and I credit you for that. As much as we have this amazing peer board, you've decided to combine these two elements, which I haven't seen anybody else combine. I'm sure there's somebody else out there in the world doing it, but being an EOS implementer and then getting that CEPA certification, for those who don't know what CEPA is, we mean Certified Exit Planning Advisor, and being able to have that all under one roof so that the company you're working on the EOS side to help them scale can immediately transition with you toward that exit planning stage, or maybe after a short hiatus in which they stop working with you, they can come back. Tell us a little bit about that engagement on both sides. I believe in EOS, it's usually a 2-year engagement that clients go on, a 24-month commitment. Is that the case with everyone? And then also on the exit planning side, how long before the moment in which I'm going to, our listeners are selling their companies, should they be reaching out to you or somebody that does what you do on the exit planning side? And is it 2 years in advance? Is it 3? Is it 5? And what should they come to the table with to that first meeting? What do you look for to say, this is the right client for me to engage with on that journey?
Yeah. So the first part of that question is that this is measured not in months, but in years, right? It takes a while for a company to position themselves so that a buyer would look in and say, this is something that's worth buying because the owner is not owner dependent, right? So that takes structure, and this is what EOS is really good at. What exit planning does very well is it sort of puts a destination. It puts a hey, this is what we're shooting for. It's not something that is a little bit theoretical, getting out of the org chart. It's I want to be able to, in 3 years, have options to sit in the owner seat and not be part of the organization, or transition, whether it be an internal transition or an external transition. But I want to have that choice, and that's when I want to have that choice by. So the time frame is definitely important, and it's measured in years, 2-3 years typically. The target market, I'm sorry, does that answer your question?
So 2-3 years on the US side, and then another 2 or 3 years on the exit planning?
No, it can be done concurrently, right? The truth of the matter is that when oftentimes clients to me, during the first engagement, I meet with a customer, a client, they say, hey, when I asked them, paint me a little bit the picture of what 5 years down the road, what does this look like for you? Oh, I want to be out, or I want to be able to transition. I want to have more time. I want to do a favorite hobby. Perfect. Okay, how are you going to get there? What does that look like? So the first part of that is really building the structure that enables them to see that it's not just a wish, but that we're moving towards that. The second part of that is, okay, now that we've made steps towards extracting yourself from the organization, tell me what that looks like in terms of exit. And that's when the conversation becomes really pointed, because things have to change. Things have to change. That's the second part of your question, is what do they need to do, to go on this journey? Is they have to be prepared to change.
Franck, explain EOS to somebody who either doesn't know what it is, or who has heard about it, knows a little, but they've never implemented it. So many of our members fit into that category. They're like, I'm starting to do something with this. We heard somebody today in the interview that we had with our board. He's like, I'm implementing EOS and it's radically improved my business, but we're doing it ourselves because I didn't want to fork out the $30,000. So there's so many people who are members of Leading Peers who are listening to this podcast that have some idea of what it is about. But what is it about the method of EOS that makes it effective? I mean, what was it about the traction book, or what is it about working with these tools that you've seen in your work with so many, with tens, maybe even close to 50 to 100 companies, has drastically improved? And why do you continue to choose EOS 4 years after you started, as opposed to so many other operating systems?
Yeah, so number one, it's not 10, 20, or 300. There's 300,000 companies that use EOS tools, right? So it's definitely a proven system. What EOS is, we implement simple tools that do 3 things, called vision, traction, and healthy. Vision, make sure that we all understand who we are and where we're going. Number 2 is create clarity and accountability that creates traction to execute all part of that vision. And 3, it's team health, make sure that everybody collaborates, communicates, and has healthy relationships, because often that does not happen. So that's what EOS does. It's really a set of tools that, when implemented right, with the right teams that are open and honest, that want to change, that want to grow, then we're going to see the outcome that they want. That's what EOS is, entrepreneurial operating system. It's not a technology solution. It is a human energy solution.
Love that. And as I was hearing you talk about the 3 components, 2 of them had come up before as important for you. One of them being the team health. You talked about how you treat your employees and what you learned as a young kid from your father that's carried on throughout your whole life. And then the accountability piece, which you mentioned is so important when you were talking about how you describe yourself to anybody that works for your company, so they know what you're about, those high standards, that high level of accountability that you look for in every team that you're a part of. Now, when it comes to the vision, that hadn't come up before. Tell us about how you work on that piece when working on EOS. Is it all the founders vision, or the CEO that comes in and says, this is a vision, or do you challenge them on the vision? Do you say, do you really want to be there? It doesn't make much sense. The world is moving in a different direction. You're not leveraging the technology changes or what's happening with the geopolitical changes in the world. How do you participate with that vision element? Or do you just take it at face value and say, all right, that's your vision. You get to call the shots. I'm just here to help you get there.
I think that we know that collective minds think better, and the vision is really created not by one person. Of course, why we do things, that typically comes from the founder, but where we're going and what are our core values, that's pretty much determined by the leadership team. So what we want to, and by the way, the core values are absolutely influenced by the founder or the CEO. So all that's put together, and it's not a one-man vision. It is really a collective vision. And to the extent that everybody's behind it, everybody is on the same page and aligned all of their energies towards reaching the goal. So it is in the beginning of our conversation that we have with our teams is, and bear in mind that when we work with our teams, what EOS does really well is it highlights weaknesses. It shows, like, it puts a spotlight on them. And that's when you sort of see, okay, I have to fix this. But to fix this, do I have the right people in order to do that? So the vision is really something that is collectively done, although there's more weight, obviously, in the core values, because that comes directly from the owner, but also as a team, who fits in this organization? They already have a vision. They already have core values because they've been operating. What is that? Let's crystallize that, and let's bring it down to really 3, 4, 5 maximum behaviors that are important that make you fit the team. So that's a collective work. What we do is often a description of what it is that we do. It's this is our niche. But the passion why we do that also has a strong influence by the owner, the founder, the CEO. Is why did we start this? I had a story. I had this person came in. We were in the second session called Vision Building 2. There's 3 days that we built the foundation. And in the first one, the second day, he comes in and says, Frank, I know what the agenda is. Now I got to tell you, I'm only doing this for money. I have no other ulterior motives to doing this. I'm like, okay. We go through the exercise and we start digging. Why are you doing this? Okay, I want to make money. Why do you want to make money? Well, because I have to pay bills and I have to do. Okay, why is that so important? And by digging deeper, we realized that there was a whole story behind this. This was a person who was an airline pilot. In 9/11, he was laid off, and he went from being a comfortable upper middle class to nothing. And he rebuilt. And the reason why he was doing what he was doing was to create financial freedom, because he had lived through tough times. So that's what we want to try and capture. That's really the story. That's why people want to embark on the journey with somebody, because they identify with that mission, that passion. So we have to try and capture that, because that comes from the owner. And then the whole team is behind it.
And let's stick to that case, because I find it fascinating. So that owner tells you he wants to build this financial freedom, which is a phenomenal objective for an entrepreneur. What a great reason to choose entrepreneurship. Now, how does the rest of the team feel about it? Because how do they get on board with that vision? Is it just for the visionary? Is it just for the founder that we're going to build financial freedom? Or is it something that we're going to build for everybody in the leadership team? Or is it something we're going to build for everybody in the organization? How do we avoid that vision being something that the founder wants for themselves, but really doesn't resonate with anybody else in the organization?
So, that's a beautiful thing about entrepreneurial companies. We think oftentimes that, hey, it's a cutthroat. I want it for myself, and I'm really looking out only for me and my family. The truth of the matter is that most entrepreneurs, and especially family entrepreneurs, understand that the families were what got them there. And they have a strong desire to make sure that their wealth is not only for them, but for everybody else. So they're sharing in that collective success. So that's easy to communicate because if you're part of the leadership team and there's going to be a transition at some point, whether it's internal, maybe ESOP, right? Employee stock ownership program. It could be a management buyout. It could be whatever it is that they would ultimately benefit. How many millionaires were they created when UPS went from private to public, right? I mean, there's so many stories of people that have made good money secured. They're not only the owner's future, but also the employees, families. And once you get money, once you build the owner's wealth, the employees' wealth, the family's wealth, the community's wealth, you're just improving the world. It's a beautiful thing.
It's amazing. And what I just heard you describe when you were talking about this person, the CEO, is that they were doing it also for their family. And it got me thinking, when you say, I want to help family businesses, at the core, don't you want to help every entrepreneur who is doing it for their family to have that freedom so they can better serve their family? It doesn't matter if the family ends up working in the business, if they are the only person in the family that's making decisions for the business. As long as they're a family first person, you want to support that entrepreneur in their journey, because it means they're going to be servant leaders who are going to be doing it for the cause of not just their own ego, but to serve the people in their family and the next generations. Would you say that's a fair depiction of the type of person you want to work with? Or do you require that there be at least two people in the family working in the business for that to be a family business?
You hit a word that's important, servant leadership. It's important for people to love their people. If a CEO, if a leader loves their people and they want to learn how to get better as leaders, those are the people I want to work with. Those are the people that will take the time and the effort and investment in order to grow, understanding that the people are going to make them grow. So those are the ones that I want to work with. My ideal customer, family business, 50 plus, that love their people, but they also want to grow, right? Because one of the challenges that we have to think about in family business is that we've heard of legacy IT systems. We have legacy people that have been with us for 20, 30 years. We trust them, we love them, they're part of our family, and we've grown. When we hired them, we were maybe, $500,000. Now all of a sudden we're $5 million. And that person's still there, but now they're not happy anymore, or they're not serving the company as well, and they're a bottleneck. So that's also being a servant leader, understanding that you have to have those tough conversations, because those people they understand that they're out of their league. They're the ones that are holding back the company. They would probably, if positioned and discussed well, would probably be happy to find a different role that really works to their strengths and lets the company grow. So does that sort of servant leadership, I think
Absolutely.
it's all about. Yeah.
I love it. And you know that servant leadership is one of the 5 core values of leading peers, which you helped me work on back in the day when we were refining those. And you know that we define our mission as an organization is to help CEOs grow so their people and businesses prosper. So it's all about servant leadership built right into the mission. Yeah. Frank, we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I'm just fascinated by so many aspects of it. I want to ask you, before I let you ask the final question to me or to yourself, what is it that makes for a great vision? You talked before about how you dug that vision out of this entrepreneur, and eventually it came out. It was more than just the money. They were doing it for that financial freedom. They were doing it because they cared about their people and they didn't want to find themselves in dire straits or not being able to help the family or in some way being a burden on their family. But you've seen so many visions, and I ask, is a great vision one that says we are going to be the leader in such and such a market, or we're going to be the number one at this? Or is a great vision one that articulates the mission of why we exist as an organization, but somehow brings it forward in some more tangible way? what is it when you are collaborating with a leadership team to define the vision of the organization, that 10-year vision that's where it starts with EOS, and then you work backwards from there to the 3-year vision, to the 1-year vision, to the quarterly vision in that VTO, vision tracker organizer. What is it that makes for a great vision? What elements do you, as an implementer, work to bring out in that vision that until you see them there, the vision is not really powerful, it's really not effective?
So I think, first of all, when we first defined the vision, we're in the second session. We don't know really what that looks like, and it's a little bit it's a moonshot. It's hey, this is where I want to go directionally. The further away it is, it's going to be blurry, and that's okay. I think what's important is really to say, okay, directionally, this is where I want to go, and it's a big, bold, hairy, audacious goal, right? BHAG, Jim Collins. But what's more important, I think, is how are we going to bring this down to the ground? How are we going to go from a 10-year to a 3-year to a 1-year to next 90 days, right? And that discipline is really what's important. Because ultimately, you can be as blurry as you want and have a directional goal. It's only going to be clearer as you get closer to it. And you're only going to get closer to it if you really do well on your 3-year, your 1-year, and your 90 days.
Makes total sense. I'm of that mindset that 3 years out is the most that we can really see very clearly in today's fast-paced world, and especially as CEOs and entrepreneurs of our own companies. Franck, when you're doing the EOS work, you're working with a company's leadership team. When you're working on the exit planning side, often you're working one-on-one with that owner who is deciding that they're going to exit, and they're not necessarily prepared to share that with the whole leadership team because it's stuff that they're working in their own mind, and they haven't even defined how they want to move forward. How can you combine both at the same time? Do you have separate sessions, one with the team on the US side, and then you take the owner apart to do the exit planning work, or do you bring the entire team into the exit planning work and are just careful with how you address it?
Yeah, I think that oftentimes in the beginning, it's all about growth, right? So we want to talk about growth. We want to talk about how do we grow best, and thus where EOS comes in. There comes a point where there's no secret that the owner is going to transition, right? I have clients that are 65 and 67. We can talk about growth all we want. At some point, there's going to be a conversation, and you want to have that conversation because the employees are going to know about it, right? So it's better to, at some point, to have that conversation and do it in a way that is transparent. And it doesn't mean that if done well, by the way, there's continuity. Most family businesses want legacy. Most family businesses want continuity. So the company, we want to build something that is transferable. Mm-hmm. And to the extent we do that well, the ownership may change, but ultimately the people that really run the day-to-day, those are the people that are going to benefit from it.
Right, so, right. And I guess if you have somebody in the leadership team that doesn't like the transition that the current owners have in mind, they're free to leave, and it's probably for the best of the organization that they not be part of that journey of where that transition takes the company. So having that transparency of sharing what the core idea is in terms of exit planning is extremely important, especially for that leadership team.
Yeah, and just to bring clarity, the people leave the organization not because they don't usually are aligned behind the vision. Usually it's because of accountability. That accountability, that spotlight of where the weak links are, happen way before we even talk about transition. So by the time we talk about transition, usually we have the team that is a strong team, right? The truth of the matter is that 50, 60, 70% of the leadership team in the first 2 years are probably going to transition because they just are not the right people. And as you grow, you realize that there's going to be change there. But so when you have that conversation about transition, you've all the weak links are usually out. They
That's
don't lead,
interesting.
they don't lead because they're not behind the vision. That happens.
That's super interesting. And I guess as the leader of an organization, when you start with EOS, you have to know that some people in your leadership team might be uncomfortable by that because
Yeah.
it's going to put the spotlight into areas of the company that aren't working well. And as you said, 50 to 70% of those executive leaders are going to transition out within those 2 years of working with EOS. So that's fascinating. Franck, what did I not ask you, which you wish to share with our listeners? What did we leave out that you think is so important that our listeners know, whether they are members of Leading Peers, whether they are interested in our organization and want to learn from members about their journeys? What did we not touch on that's so crucial to you?
I would say that it comes down to core values. I think that it's really important for any CEO to really be open and honest, willing to grow, being vulnerable. Those are the hallmarks of not only servant leadership, but of any successful organization. It starts with the leader, and it has to be transferred down to the rest of the people. So I would say, you didn't ask, it's not that you didn't ask me a question. I would just emphasize that those are the types of people that I think we want to attract in our organization, leading peers, but also those are the characteristics that make any great company.
Thank you, Franck. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for everything you have taught me. And I cannot wait to continue growing our friendship and seeing you blossom into an ever more impactful CEO and entrepreneur. And I want to be by your side to help you make that happen just as much as I want you by my side to help me take Leading Peers to new heights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo, and I can't wait for you to continue challenging me. Be well.